I was sterilizing the table when the first drop of alien blood hit it. It wasn't dramatic. No alarms, no guards crashing through the door, no distant thunder of orbital cannons. Just a soft, wet sound. Tick like rain striking steel. I froze, surgical cloth in one hand, scalpel in the other, and stared as the drop spread across the surface of my work table in a thin, shimmering film. The blood wasn't red. It was a deep violet black, threaded with faint luminescence, as if stars were dissolving inside it. I looked up. The woman standing in my infirmary doorway was tall, impossibly composed despite the fact that her left side was soaked through with the same dark fluid. Her posture was regal even in injury, spine straight, chin lifted. She wore no crown, but she didn't need one. The air around her felt heavier, charged, like the moments before a storm breaks. Behind her, the corridor was empty. No guards. No attendants. Just her. "You are the human healer," she said, her voice controlled but tight, like a blade held too long in a clenched fist. I swallowed. "Yes. I'm Dr. Elias Ward. You're bleeding. You need to sit down." Her eyes, silver, reflective, too aware, flicked to the table. Another drop fell, then another. She stepped forward, finally allowing herself to lean, bracing one hand against the edge. The metal groaned under her grip. "I will not sit," she said. "I will endure." That should have been my first clue. The second was the way my hands shook when I reached for the med scanner. I'd been stationed on Cairo Station for 3 years, a human medical officer in what was politely called a multi-species diplomatic outpost, and more accurately described as a powder keg with a view of 3 suns. I'd treated beings with copper blood, ammonia blood, crystalline circulatory systems that hummed when stressed. But this was different. This was royalty. The scanner chirped softly as I passed it over her side. The readout spiked, symbols cascading faster than my implant could translate. "What happened?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. "A ceremonial blade malfunctioned," she said. "Or was sabotaged. The distinction is currently under investigation." Of course it was. I moved closer, cutting away the fabric around the wound. The material parted easily, revealing a gash that ran from just below her ribs down toward her hip. The edges were clean, but deep. Too deep to ignore. "Lie down," I said again. Firmer this time. She studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she inclined her head and sat on the edge of the table. When she lay back, it wasn't in surrender. It was calculation. As I worked, I felt it. The weight. Not gravity, presence. As if the room itself was paying attention. "You are afraid," she observed. "Only an idiot wouldn't be," I replied. "Hold still." A pause. Then, unexpectedly, a faint curve of her lips. Honesty. A rare trait. The blood pooled faster than I liked. I activated the cauterizer, adjusting the frequency to match her physiology. She hissed softly, but didn't cry out. "You should have attendants," I muttered. I dismissed them. "Why?" "Because if I die," she said calmly, "I will know it was not by their hand." That made my stomach drop. I sealed the last of the wound and applied a regenerative field. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. The table was stained now, alien blood etched into its surface, like a map of some distant galaxy. "It will scar," I said. She sat up, inspecting the bandage. "Scars are records of survival." I nodded. "You're lucky." Her gaze snapped back to mine. Sharp. Focused. "I do not believe in luck," she said. "I believe in causes and consequences." She slid off the table, steady now, and turned toward the door. Halfway there, she stopped. "Human healer," she said. What is your name? I hesitated. Protocol dictated that I give my identification, rank, station number. But something in the way she asked, quiet, almost careful, made me answer differently. Elias, I said. Elias Ward. The silence that followed was absolute. She didn't turn around, didn't move at all. For a heartbeat, I wondered if she'd collapsed without a sound. Then she spoke. Say it again. Elias Ward. I repeated, confusion creeping in. Why? Slowly, she turned to face me. The silver of her eyes had darkened, reflecting the infirmary lights like twin voids. That is not possible, she said. A chill crawled up my spine. I promise you it is. That's what it says on my birth records. She approached me again, steps measured, almost reverent. When she stopped, she was close enough that I could see the faint bioluminescent patterns along her skin shifting, responding to something I couldn't perceive. On my world, she said, there is a name spoken only in extinction myths. A name associated with an event so catastrophic that our historians classified it as a cultural wound. My heart hammered. Okay, that's unfortunate, but... Elias Ward, she said, tasting the words. The human who would not kneel. I laughed. I couldn't help it. You've got the wrong guy. Her hand shot out, gripping my wrist with surprising gentleness and terrifying strength. Do not mock this, she said. That name appears in our oldest pre-FTL records. In transmissions intercepted before your species officially reached the stars. That's impossible, I said. I'm 36 years old. I grew up on Luna Station. My biggest rebellion was switching majors. She searched my face, something like disbelief flickering across her features. Your genome, she murmured. It matches the archived profile within acceptable variants. My mouth went dry. Archived what? She released my wrist and stepped back, as if suddenly uncertain. I am Queen Esikera of the Third Axis, she said, inclining her head, not deeply, but enough to matter. And if you are who her name suggests, then the balance of power in this sector is far more fragile than we believed. I sat down hard on the nearest stool. You're bleeding on my table and telling me I'm a myth, I said. I need you to explain. Slowly. She considered me, then nodded. Very well. She spoke of a human emissary centuries ago, long before official contact, who had arrived alone in a damaged vessel. A man who refused tribute, refused titles, refused to bow even when threatened with annihilation. A man who spoke of consent between civilizations, of boundaries, of a future that did not belong to conquerors. He died, she said. Or so we believed. But his name was Elias Ward. I shook my head. That's no. My father was Elias Ward. My grandfather, too. It's just a name. Her eyes widened minutely. A lineage, she whispered. Of course. The room felt smaller now. The hum of the station louder. What does this have to do with you? I asked. She straightened. Because that human was present at the signing of the first silence. I frowned. The what? A binding accord, she said. One that prevents my people from exercising full military authority over emerging species. An agreement that shackled us. And you're bleeding in my infirmary because there are factions who wish to break that silence, she said. And your existence complicates their plans. I stared at the blood-stained table. You think they'll come after me? I know they will, she replied. The station shuddered then, not violently, but enough to make the lights flicker. Esikera closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, the queen was gone. What remained was a strategist. They have already begun, she said. Alarms started blaring. Over the next hours, chaos unfolded. Docking bays sealed. Ships went dark. Whispers of assassination plots rippled through diplomatic channels. And through it all, Esikara stayed close. Too close, like a shadow that bled authority. You should leave, I told her as we moved through maintenance corridors. I'm not worth a war. She looked at me, something fierce and unreadable in her expression. You misunderstand, she said. You are the reason a war may yet be avoided. We reached a hidden shuttle bay, ancient and forgotten. She keyed in a code that made the lights flare to life. This vessel predates the silence, she said. It will not be tracked. Where does it go? She met my eyes. Anywhere you choose. I laughed weakly. You're offering me a ship because my name scared the galaxy. I am offering you agency, she corrected. Something my people once denied yours. Explosions rocked the station. Distant but getting closer. I looked at her. Really looked. The blood loss, the weight of centuries pressing on her shoulders, the resolve that refused to bend. What happens if I stay? I asked. Then you become a symbol, she said. And symbols are dangerous. I took a breath. And if I go? Then you live, she said. And perhaps one day, you choose to return. The choice shouldn't have been hard. I was a doctor, not a diplomat, not a legend. But as I stepped onto the shuttle, I realized something. Names mattered. Stories mattered. And whether I wanted it or not, mine had already been written once. Esikara paused at the ramp. Elias Ward, she said softly. The table will be cleaned. The blood erased. But the record remains, I said. She inclined her head. Yes. The ramp closed. The engines hummed to life. As the shuttle slipped into the void, I looked back at the station shrinking behind us, at the Queen standing alone in the bay. The galaxy had gone silent once because of a man with my name. This time I suspected it would have to listen again. The shuttle's engines hummed steadily as the stars stretched into streaks across the viewport. Esikara sat opposite me, her posture still taut, but her hands finally resting on her lap. The faint glow from the bandages on her side pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat in tune with the shuttle. I suppose you'll want answers, she said finally, her voice quieter than it had been in the corridors. About why I came to you. Why I bled on your table. Why I dismissed my guards. I nodded, still trying to wrap my head around the absurdity of it all. I'd like to know why my name seems to mean more than my life does. Her eyes softened, almost imperceptibly, because names carry power. Not the power you see in fleets, armies, or laws. The power of legacy, of choices that echo across centuries. Your name is a reminder that humans once stood in defiance of conquest. That defiance still matters, even now. I swallowed, staring at my hands. And me? I'm just a doctor. I'm not legendary. Not yet, she said, with a faint smile. But you're human, and sometimes that is enough. We traveled in silence for a long while. I watched the stars drift past, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt, yet somehow heavier with responsibility. Then, finally, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since she arrived. What happens when they find us? Esikara's silver eyes glimmered. They will try. Some factions will want to capture me. Some will want to destroy you. Others will try to use the legend of Elias Ward for their own gain. But together, we have a chance to change the outcome. To write a new story, rather than repeat the old one. I thought about the blood on my table, the shocked silence when I gave my name, the centuries of history weighing down on one human life. And I realized something I hadn't before. I was no longer just a man. I was part of something larger, something that could shape the course of galaxies, if I survived. Then we prepare, I said. My voice was steadier now. We find allies. We stay ahead. We make sure your enemies don't succeed. She inclined her head in approval. And we ensure that the first silence remains unbroken, or broken in a way that benefits life rather than tyranny. Over the next few cycles, we worked in tandem. SciFiHorror's knowledge of her people's politics was unparalleled, and my medical and logistical skills allowed us to operate in the shadows. Together, we intercepted assassination attempts, decoded encrypted communications, and secured safe havens across the sector. Every encounter reminded me that my name was more than a label. It was a symbol, a bridge between two species, two histories. Months later, we returned to Cairo Station, not as fugitives, but as negotiators. SciFiHorror walked through the corridors with her usual regal composure, though now I noticed subtle nods from humans and aliens alike. The same corridors that had felt oppressive and dangerous when she first bled on my table now seemed charged with cautious respect. We reached the council chamber, a cavernous hall lined with representatives from dozens of worlds. SciFiHorror stood, unflinching, and for the first time in my life I saw the full weight of her presence, not as a patient, not as a threat, but as a ruler who demanded to be heard. "I am SciFiHorror," she announced, Queen of the Third Axis. And beside me stands Elias Ward, the human whose name is remembered in our oldest histories. He represents the possibility of choice, of restraint, of coexistence. Let's not forget what has been sacrificed in the past, and let us choose wisely for the future. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, delegates began to murmur. Heads turned. Questions were asked. And for the first time, the galaxy seemed to pause, to listen, not to threats or armies, but to the legacy of a name and the courage of one human and one queen. Later, in private, Sarah turned to me. "You could have refused. You could have run. Instead, you stayed." I shrugged, trying to hide the tremor in my chest. "You bled on my table. I couldn't just let that go." She smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and acknowledgement. "And in doing so, you reminded me that even rulers can trust someone not of their world. That trust may be more valuable than any army." I looked out the viewport as the station glimmered under the light of 3 suns. For the first time in my life, I understood that the universe was bigger than fear, bigger than politics, bigger than a single human lifespan, and that sometimes a name, spoken at the right time, could change everything. "Elias," she said softly. "Yes." "Prepare yourself," she said, eyes glinting with something like mischief and determination. "Because the galaxy just learned your name. And now, everyone is going to want to know the story behind it." I chuckled, even as my stomach twisted with nerves. "I suppose we should make it a good one, then." She extended her hand. I took it, feeling the strength of centuries in her grip, and for the first time, I believed that together, we might survive what was coming. Not just survive, but change the course of history. The galaxy was no longer silent. And as we stood there, hand in hand, I realized something that I had never expected. I was no longer just a man on a small station, cleaning tables and tending wounds. I was part of a legend, a living bridge between past and future. And whatever came next, I would face it with the queen who bled on my table and who had gone silent when she first heard my name. And that silence had been the beginning, not the end.